Okay, so the key to success is delegating at the end of the day, would you say?
Well, I'd say that it certainly is one key to
One key
success.
to
It's the
success.
key, I would say, it's the key to growing an operation beyond a certain size is you have to learn how to delegate. And if you can't do that, you know, you can still run a great smaller business, but you'll never grow, develop a great business. And, frankly, a lot of these bigger businesses, sometimes what has to happen is another company has to buy it where that other person, they're not they're not that person with the idea on like how to like for a new business, but their idea frankly is how to lead a larger enterprise.
So as far as this is the $1,000,000 question here, would you consider yourself lucky?
Yes. I have lived a very interesting but fortunate life. I've been very blessed.
I love that.
I'd say it's very important to me to try to pass that on.
Yes.
I think a great example of this is I did end up going to college against sort of all odds, and I ended up doing actually reasonably well in college. That's when I finally kind of realized. I mean, I had realized towards the end of high school, like, oh, I need to start turning in homework assignments and stuff like that. But in college, I actually, I think I started off like with a C average, and I ultimately had some trimesters where I would have straight A's. But I had to work at it. I had to work at it very hard. Going back to the how I have been blessed. Well, I went to college, and when I ultimately came back to AGM after college, and that was like, I mean, in like on the path that I am now, on a solid like career path, about 8 years had slipped by. And one of the things that I came to realize early on was most of the employees here had never been to college. And I was shocked. Like, not only had they not gone to college, but they didn't particularly have an interest in going. And since then, in the ensuing 35 years or so that I've been with the company, I've ended up making it sort of my mission to give them that opportunity to go back to school. In fact, early on, sometimes nobody would be in college at any given time at our company. In 2019, 27% of our workforce went to college. I mean, where they took at least one or more classes. Actually, that represented 34 employees, took a total of 124 classes, about 3.8 classes per individual.
Wow.
And the whole thing costs me only about $50,000, in part because some of the ones that I talked into, and by the way, I also give them wage incentives to go to college. In other words, if they complete classes, I have a formula worked out, in terms of the relevancy of the class and the grade they receive, the number of credit hours they put into it, things like that. So, but anyhow, with between FAFSA and the GI Bill, and then our own stuff that we do through the IRS Section 127, we get all these people to go. And so like $50,000, we made over $5 million in profit that year. So we put less than 1% of our profit, of our pre-tax profit, less than 1% of our pre-tax profit went towards this education.
Wow.
And yet, what do we get in return? Well, we've got, that year and every year, they're taking classes in computer science and in mathematics and engineering and machining and communications, management, English, oral. They're improving their oral skills, their written skills. They're developing into employees who are promotable because they're so much more intelligent. And so I think one problem a lot of my fellow employers have who don't do this is oftentimes they're having to look more outside their company to promote, get people in from out to promote, whereas we're able to do a lot more promotion from within, and plus, and be able to pay people more and more,
right?
Which is, I mean, it's allowing people to be. A lot of these people didn't get the gift that I got. In other words, they didn't have caring. I shouldn't even say that. Their parents may have been very caring, but they didn't have the finances, right, to help their children do this, or maybe they didn't also have just kind of like the savvy to realize, I still run into people here in town where it's kind of like, they want their kids to go, into the workforce right after high school, and that's their dream for their children. And I oftentimes in those situations, as I get to know those people, kind of like, well, there is another path, and it could be even better for not only just for your son or your daughter, but for their children, their families in the future. But going back to this, this focus on education, I actually am of the mind that people should be able to study whatever they want to study.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if it doesn't help our company. Why? Because it's so cheap. So with the IRS Section 127, they can go to, you can provide up to $5,250 per employee each year, and then you can write that right off your taxes. So in other words, if you say made $100,000 in taxes and you sent one of your employees to school, if you made $100,000 in pre-tax profits and you sent one of your employees to school, and they used up all that $5,250, now you would be paying taxes on $94,750, not on the $100,000.
Interesting.
And I have some of my fellow business owners, they're basically like, well, Howard, like if I send my students to college, or my employees to college, he's like, so they're like, what happens if they leave me? And my response to those people is basically, if you don't send them to college, what happens if they stay?
Wow, that's amazing.
And
so true.
So we try to offer this to everybody. Not everybody takes this up. In any company, whatever benefits you have, they're not always appealing to people. In other words, some people find more appeal. This more appealing than another one. In fact, this last year, one of our longer term employees, who's basically has been dealing with cancer, and he spoke up at one of our meetings, and he told his fellow employees, and this is an employee who is not known for speaking with sentiment. He's kind of typically a little on the gruff side, and but he basically told the other employees in that meeting, he said, I've been here at AGM for 30 years.
Wow.
I'm sorry, 30, I think it's 33 or 34 years at that point. And he said, and I never appreciated the medical benefits, never appreciated until I got cancer.
Wow.
And he said, if AGM had not been here for me in this way, I would not be alive today.
Wow.
And he said it with tears in his eyes.
Wow.
And so, when you're a CEO, like another thing you were talking about, you were asking me that question about, well, what does it take to be a successful CEO? I think another thing is, it's that balance. You have to, you have to really be thinking about, how much money goes, say, towards pay, compensation, versus how much money goes towards benefits, and then what are those benefits?
What are those?
And I'm not going to say that we've got it all figured out. I'm constantly, scratching my head on all this stuff and trying to figure it out better. But it is, it's a lot of times running a company is about, putting attention into different areas, and then, trying to figure out what the right balance is. And I'm sure, any one of my employees might kind of like, well, Howard spends too much time doing this, or Howard spends too much time doing that.
Yeah.
And they may be right, but I'm trying to get it figured out.
Yeah.